just scrape off 2 inches and replace the asphalt just because the actual foundation of that structure is still that integrity is still there. And so as I read the minutes and I kind of get caught up on a lot of the discussions that have happened over the past few months, few weeks, I really just think that a study or some sort of preliminary engineering discussion should be done to determine the level of rehabilitation that the roads around town should be done. And that's something that myself have been involved in countless of projects around Central Texas before. I have a couple now that I'm doing for different municipalities just south of here. Um, I'm not looking for any, absolution or flip a coin one way or another. I really just wanted to put that thought out there for each and every single person in this room to think about because, as we start preparing these EOPCs, these cost estimates, I could easily tell you that a road for about 500 feet might cost $1 million to reconstruct, but would you want to spend $1 million if a 100,000 mill and overlay job would do the trick? Right? So that's kind of the point I wanted to bring up to everyone, and I'll be around if anyone has any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
I talked with Chuck Fuller,
Mm-hmm.
who is over the Texas Association of Paving and Asphalt, or something
Mhm.
like that, the TAPA.
Sure.
And I spoke with Kevin Schneider. It works for Lone Star Paving,
Mm-hmm.
but he referred me to TAPA. And Chuck Fuller is the executive of that committee.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that they have experts there who could come out and tell us kind of where to start without doing a whole study.
Sure.
Now, this was the week they did all the bids for TxDOT for the year.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't get back to me yet, but what do you think about something like that?
Sure. And that's something that I've actually come across before. Give you a case study. I've done a project in the city of Pflugerville, just north of Austin, and the city of New Braunfels, just south of Austin, um, with very similar scopes. We have all these roads. We need to repair them because they were constructed 25 years ago and they're nearing their 30-year design life. One client decided to do a roadway study to determine the plan of attack, right? The plan of action, and the other one decided to just do a surface level visual analysis of what the roads look like. Now, I myself am not a pavement engineer. I'm a roadway engineer by background, but a civil engineer by trade. But I've worked with enough pavement engineers who are, the actual geeks in the lab who mix the concrete and stuff together and can tell you what kind of pavement would look. And 10 times out of 10, they will say, we need to do the study. Personally, some roads are so bad that you could easily tell that one can be done or that one needs to be reconstructed, not just because of what I'm seeing on the surface level, but also the ride quality of the road itself, right? If you're getting a lot of undulations on a road, but the surface itself looks decent, that's an indication that underneath it, things are failing. Um, but to go back to the point I'm saying is that one project went out to bid, and we assessed it based on a visual walkthrough. We all hopped on a truck literally and just looked at it, and went out to bid with no hiccups. And the other one, we did the same thing, no hiccups. But what we found out in that first project where we did not do that study is that there were a lot more change orders during construction because as we were digging, literally out there digging, we're finding out that oh, this section of road that's supposed to have 8 inches of base material only has 6 inches, and we need to bring it up to standard and provide an extra 2 inches. Well, that's 2 inches that we didn't account for when we bid the project, so that's a change order that we brought to the contractor. And things like that just kept happening over time, such that all these change orders are stacking and stacking, as opposed to the other project where doing the preliminary engineering study, we were able to encapsulate really what that road looked like using, in that case, we did something called NDT, non-destructive testing, which is, we had what's called an FWD machine, a falling weight deflectometer, which basically just shoots laser in the ground that looks at the vibration as you're driving in the road, and it looks at what the pavement looks like without having to dig it up. So that's the case study I'm presenting. So I've been in both situations. Um, the goal really is to try and identify as many of those problems beforehand before you get a project shovel ready.
So do you think someone like the head of TAPA, who is an expert in the field, would be able to adequately give us that information?
I think that he would be able to give us a surface level and a visual level information, but I don't think that he'll be able to give us an assessment of what underneath the pavement is looking like.
So Alfonso, go ahead.
Sounds like RAI, whatever.
Well, RAS.
RAS.
But so,
Were you, I'm sorry, were you in the meeting at the library that we talked about? this?
I was, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so you've heard their presentation about
I did.
the
Mhm.
lasers and,
Right. That they actually, they were actually the company that prepared the pavement analysis index that we used for that other project. Now that was contracted directly with the city and put together 2 years before I even got it. Before they even put the project out for design. So I just noticed that's something they did.
that's the kind of company that we're,
Correct, yes.
That does the
I
high-end
haven't
stuff.
worked with them personally, but I've worked with many firms that do the same exact things that they do.
I guess, if we want to open this up.
Sure.
Pat,
My thought,
Pat, get your mic close to you. Sorry.
I'm in love. No, I think that, I understand what we're trying to do, but the guy that was over here talking, 200 and what, 2.25, 250 a mile? Just to skim it and coat it?
Oh, right.
Yes, I mean, come on, who knows, change
Right.
orders.
Right.
But I was thinking about that, and we've got 40 miles of roads, and God knows how many we have to fix.
Sure.
But for $1 million, you can do 4 miles.
Sure.
It's going to take you 10 years just to work through the 40, assuming that you don't run into any problems with the bottom of the cake. So
From
it would seem to me that, and I go back to my initial, if you hire these expert guys that come in, do all their technology and stuff, they were also going to give us a package on prioritizing the repair, estimating the cost of the repair, some way that we could budget it out to 5 years or so, that I thought would be a much more comfortable, logical way to go about it.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with that. I would not do a pavement study without them telling us some sort of a ranking system, which roads need to go first. Typically, roads now here, at least in the state of Texas, get designed with a 20-year to a 30-year design life, such that theoretically, the pavement itself should last you 20 to 30 years, assuming you don't need to widen it or anything. And not including regular maintenance. But if you're going to do a road study and you guys elect to do that at some point in the future, I wouldn't stop at just this is what you need to do to this road. You need to get some sort of information from whoever that consultant is, whether it's RAS or whoever, to tell you these are the roads that need to be done now within the next 5 years. Otherwise, you're looking at bigger costs, and then trickles on down from then on. Now, you don't have to do 40 miles worth of road all at once. Ideally, we could all do that, right? But that ranking system is, I think, the second most important thing that would come out of a study like that.
So have you looked at the CES study that we had, was it 2021?
Yes, I've looked at it briefly.
So that was a study that the city paid for, right? So what did you think about that study?
I mean, I think it was all. I think it was. I think it was fine in looking at it from a surface level, but that study did not look at the actual subsurface analysis of the pavement itself. That was a similar. I would almost compare it to a visual walkthrough of the city, but it wasn't using similar, newer technologies of what I would prefer to see on a road study to be done on something like this of this scope.
So I'm not an engineer.
Sure.
So have you ever tried to dig a hole in Morgan's Point.
Oh, absolutely. You'll hit
It's the
rock at,
craziest
like,
thing, man.
negative 2 feet, right?
Yeah, you can't go 2 feet, 2 inches. It literally, like,
Right.
and that's where I feel like, again,
Mhm.
feelings are fickle. I'm not an engineer, but it seems to me that we could probably get started on something,
Mhm.
right? Using those guys, maybe.
Yeah, but why not do it right the first time? I mean, I go back, yeah, it's a lot of money for a study, but if they're worth a flip, you've got everything you want in one tight little bag.
And if they can help us prioritize the roads, kind of with the amount of cash that we have in the bank, if we're
Yeah.
going to spend $1 million on Lake Forest, and we want to hit that one first, since that was one of your selections. However, if we could have waited on it for 5 years, and we can hit the roads that are going to cost us double the cost in 5 years, but we didn't really realize it's a priority right now, we're going to hit that law of diminishing return where it might cost us double if we wait another year. So to his point, and that's what I was going to ask you earlier, like if you had ever used RAS, because it really, Dalton had gotten it from a recommendation from another city manager. However, you kind of answered it for me. But I mean, really, that's the part of, if we can, since he said it, that's the second most valuable thing out of that study is the prioritization of the roads. It's great that y'all wanted to do the 7 roads, but if those aren't the ones that are going to give us the biggest return on investment for a huge project, then we might just be.
And if they will give us a long-term ranking and we can budget ahead, I mean, come on. But have a goal, here's how we can, in 10 years, we can get everything up to standards. At least we've got a plan and you can budget ahead for it and you know what's coming up.
And
Everybody knows. It's all out there in the open. And you say, well, why did you do John Deere Street? Well, because according to the study, that's what needs to be done first, not last.
And something like that, that's a great point, right? The prioritization is really important. That's why studies like this, whether it's pavement, drainage, utilities, preliminary engineering studies go hand in hand a lot with CIP plans. I know you guys are working on a comprehensive master plan right now because you're trying to look out for the future and figuring out, okay, how are we going to fund this? Because in 3 years' time, we need to start looking at doing this because of whatever study we looked at before saying that in 10 years, this thing is close to failure, So that's why the study like that, the comprehensive plan, the CIP plan, they all really do go hand in hand.
It would seem to me that if we're going to go out and ask for some support from other places, COG or grants or whatever, if we've got a no kidding good road engineer guy study that's state of the art, whatever that means, that should be a big plus also. You're not just winging it.
Right.
So
Yeah,
what
one of 'em,
was
I
the
think
point of
they're-
the CES study?
I
Because, I mean, it's 2 years old and we paid for it.
right.
And so what was the point of that study? If it's not, like, again, I'm not an engineer. I'm just curious.
No, I know.
'Cause it does prioritize the roads.
Right. Now, I wasn't involved in putting that study together. From my understanding, that was
Sure.
something that Dalton was cooking up behind the scenes, right? But I know Dalton, as long as you guys have for 3 years. From my understanding, his goal with that is probably to start opening up the conversation and scratch the surface.
That was done prior to him getting here. And so, yeah. And so that was kind of, I mean, if Donna, you want to say anything, but if not, it was, right now, kind of in that time frame of just making sure that we were addressing certain needs. However, maybe they weren't as, eager to spend as much money as possibly this council may be because they'd come off, one, not having audits, or two, possibly being misled by a previous city administrator about how much money they really had in the bank too. So it was trying to get something in there so they would at least have some study that they could, kind of use for guidance.
Well, I don't know if it wasn't maybe, and Donna, you can speak to this because I don't like throwing darts at you, and it's not you guys. No, I don't. I'm not so sure that maybe it wasn't a case of we didn't know what we didn't know, because the first time I was introduced to the bells and whistles and where I fell in love with the whole RAS thing was that presentation. So I'm not so sure that as a city, as a community, we didn't know that technology was out there, and that's what we needed to do. So just a thought. follow-up for you is, so multiple companies do that, the bells and whistles.
Yeah, sure.
How many, just off the top of your head, have you guys used? So, because, again, the only one that we've seen is RES, which comes in at 48 or, yeah, so, and, you know, I'm guilty, I'm like, ooh, I love this is awesome. It's like Xbox.
Regularly work from my region is from the Austin area all the way to, well, really the Temple area all the way down to the valley. And depending on where my project is, I've worked with 3 different firms off the top of my head.
Could you tell us the names of those?
Or the
Sure.
ones that are in our region?
Your region, I know that, well, they drive anywhere, so.
They know about roads.
Yeah. The first one off the top of my head, just because they're the most recent ones I've worked with, is ARA, Applied Research something, but ARA. They're the ones I work with in the city of Pflugerville. Another one is HVJ and Associates, and the third one is Rabba Kistner.
Can you email me those and I can pass them on? Okay.
And I could, you know, if this is a conversation that y'all would like to have, I have contacts with all those firms that I could pass on.
So I have another question then. If we did get a study like that, then we still have to get an engineer to write the biddable road, right? We're
Right.
not done. We're
Correct.
still right where we are now.
Correct, but so after a study like that is done, typically what happens is someone, an engineer, someone like us at Cobb Fendley, would go in and actually design the construction plans, and those are what's going out to bid. But what's the content of the construction plans is determined by the study itself, right?
Okay. So the study would tell you what to do. You wouldn't have to go out and
Correct.
decide it yourself.
Correct. At any rate, like depending or regardless of whether or not a study is done or not, I highly recommend, whether it's roads, drainage, or utilities, I highly do not recommend putting a project out there for bid for a contractor without a definitive scope. That is a very quick way to get taken advantage of by some contractors, because without a definitive scope, who's to say what's actually to be done? And there's nothing to compare it to price-wise.
Right, I think we know that.
Yeah, I think that it doesn't matter who does the engineering study. I don't own any of them. But I think that gives us a solid base to start off with, and something that's accurate, hopefully accurate. I mean, they are standards for these guys. And something that is, I hate to be CYA, but it's defendable.
Right.
It's logical. It makes sense. You have an expert telling you expert stuff. You know that not all experts.
And engineering studies like that, to be published for public use, are required to be sealed by a licensed professional engineer. So that liability really will fall on the engineer to give you accurate information.
Alfonso, how long does a study like that, what is the lifespan of that study? So just doing the monkey math in my head, you know, we talk about 250 per mile, so we can do 4 miles for $1 million. We got 40 miles, $10 million, la 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 la. How long would that study be
You're
good for?
talking about, just so I'm clear, how long before you need to do another study?
Yeah,
I would say within the next 5 to 10 years.
okay.
And that's because the other roads can be followed.
Correct, yeah. If you think about it, right, as you work on roads, other roads are getting worse, depending on.
And one of the things that we're going to talk about later is this new road whatever, 20,
From the Four Corners to
2483.
high school.
just turn left.
Yeah.
But
Or
if they
general
widen
store.
that thing and bring more traffic in, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna have more road work to do, just simply because of more traffic. So,
And we're growing, you know, so, yeah.
it would be nice if we could.
Well, I mean, hopefully, just to probably answer yours, hopefully that wouldn't actually deal with the residential streets.
Right.
Yeah, besides the
No, but I mean,
footprints, because I mean, Morgan's Point Road itself is a county road, so we're not on the hook for those dollars. So even though we might get more traffic going from Morgan's Point Road to 2483, hopefully they're not cutting through residential streets and stuff like that.
Well, let me just, I don't know if you were at our council meeting. I guess it was either June or July. And we were talking about the road study. And we were talking about doing a tour of the city and our roads, and which is how we came up with the
Right.
6 to 8 roads that we thought we thought were a priority now. And then we would do a road study in 6 months to take a full assessment of the city. We wanted to get started on roads like Sherwood, and I can't remember the collector roads or the feeder
We
roads.
went to
or-
SaveMyRoads.com.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the importance of preserving your collector roads first because they get the most traffic. So we kind of identified those. And we based it off of the 2014 study that was identified the collector roads for us. And that's how we came up with the ones that we did.
Yeah.
Right, and so then what we said was, we identified the roads, and my understanding was, and I am not an engineer or know anything about roads, but my understanding was then we were going to go to you, and you were going to help us determine how to go out for bid on those roads.
Sure.
That you were going to come up with a scope for each road of, okay, that's my understanding. And then we were going to go out for bid, not for a estimate of opinion of probable cost,
Like go out
but
to
an actual bid, a proposal to come in and start, because I think some of us like wanted to get started, and a study's awesome. And yes, we know we need a study, because we haven't had a study since 2014. Well, no one is really calling that a study. Okay, 21,
The citizens paid for it as a study.
like, okay, yeah. And I think, BJ's not here, but I think they followed that for a certain period of time for what was in the scope of what BJ could do. But then there are things outside the scope of what he could do that were identified that haven't been done. So we wanted to get the ball rolling on some of these streets and then do a study. So what's your thought about that?
So, that's a fine approach, but it all goes back to that scope, right? I can develop a scope for a mill and overlay on that road. I can develop a scope to chip seal that road, or I can develop a scope to reconstruct the whole road 3.5 feet deep. I can't, in my good conscience, tell you that I'm confident that milling and overlaying that road is what that road needs. We can do it if you'd like, but
Well, but I think this is a multi-tier process, I think. I think what Roxanne was trying to do was to bring someone in to assess these 6 to 8 roads. And then the next step would be to get you involved, to take a look at what the person came up with, to say, yes, this makes sense on these roads, or it doesn't make sense on the road. So it wouldn't be on you initially. It would be on,
The head of the TAPA.
sure.
okay, the head of TAPA. And so that's my understanding of how we got here.
And then those roads, those 8 to 9 roads, are we planning on including that in the study as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if we do a study, it's not going to incrementally cost
And-
that much more.
And if this,
I don't know that we're going to be able to afford to do all 8 to 9.
Sure,
This was
Yeah,
just
right.
It was a way to get us started to preserve our roads so they
Right.
don't get worse.
but or in theory, if you did, right, just hypothetically, included those roads in the study 9 months from now, and we determined that, this needs a lot more than just milling and overlaying or whatever the TAP individual recommended, you essentially just put a bandage solution on something that might not have needed it. Because whatever that new asphalt is that you put down 6 months ago, well, now you're saying a year and a half from now, we're going to bid this out to reconstruct.
So the head of TAPA is not going to give us accurate information?
Well,
Like, we would have to have faulty information to
I
get down that
think he
road.
would give you information based on a visual analysis, but I don't think he can give you information.
I'll
on
have to
looking
find
at
out what he would do because he
Right.
sounded like he was the expert, and
Sure.
he doesn't have any skin in the game because he doesn't pave roads. He's the head of the TAPA. So
Sure.
I'll have to find out if that would be even feasible
Mm-hmm.
because we definitely don't want to just do something and have to do it over again.
Right,
But
And I think
But,
that's where a
right,
study would give
absolutely.
it that.
well,
But if I understood it
we didn't
correctly-
like the study from 2021 supposedly, so we get another study. I mean, are we just going to take the study blindly, or are we going to,
No, we're gonna hire somebody that's not gonna just give you a surface. They're gonna do the
okay,
tech in-depth,
maybe that's the answer then.
and that's what RAS was gonna do. I mean, that was their
Right.
whole point, was
Right.
they don't just go out and take pictures and say, damn, this is a bad-looking road.
Right,
They use all of their high tech
right.
and all of their knowledge. And
Well, I am
don't
definitely
care
for
what the name
road
is on
studies.
it, you know, but it's
But-
only, I think the guy said it was like 3 months by the time you tell them to come and then you pay them or, you know, whatever. By the time they come out, they run their gizmo, they do the analysis and they get your report. It's only 3 months.
I don't recall the exact date, but that sounds pretty.
I mean,
timeline, but that
we're not
sounds
holding
pretty
anybody to
accurate,
dates,
right?
but I mean,
Right.
it wasn't like a 2-year process
what the
to
timeline
get
is
it
now.
done.
No, definitely not. If someone's
So,
doing a
I
road
think-
study for 2 years, yeah.
I agree with you guys. Let's get going. But let's make sure that we're going in the right direction and
Right.
not doing it with Band-Aids. I hate Band-Aids.
Right.
Because not only do they not work real well, they just booger when you take them off.
And another thing to think about is, I don't know this type of individual. Is he an engineer by background? Is he a contractor by trade?
And
Could you give me his contact so I could probably pass him
Yeah.
along to Alfonso?
his name is Chuck Fuller, and he's from Texas Association of Pavement,
Okay.
no, Texas Asphalt and Pavement Association.
So at least if I could put them in connection with each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
it kind of might help
Yeah.
from a city standpoint.
Yeah, I just don't know if, if he's doing all this out of the goodness of his own heart, as a.
I asked him for a bid.
Oh, quote.
I did not ask him to do it for nothing.
Right, and it's like, will he be taking on, or his team will be taking on the liability of telling us, with a professional seal that this is what needs to be done on these stretches of roads, right? So,
I think that's very important.
Yeah, I don't want to double tap the funds. And I don't know this individual, Roxanne, and I don't mean to, sound demeaning, but the guy's in it to make a buck. I mean, he's a lobbyist, in my opinion, already, just listening to him. And I mean, he works for the Asphalt Association, so of course he's going to try to get business. I would rather have, and I wish we would have done this previously, obviously, but, now we're 5 months in and we're back to talking about road studies. If we would have done this 5 months ago, we would have been past that 3-month hurdle and we could have been laying asphalt.
Devil's advocate, we asked for multiple bids on the road
Yes,
study.
ma'am.
We
Nope,
did
you're
not
right.
get it after multiple requests.
Yeah,
And
and I
I'm just
think-
not going to take one bid.
No,
on
ma'am.
Something
No,
as
no, and that's what
significant.
we need
I couldn't
this
get a
time.
second name.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't go
I
forward.
think if you can give us those 3 names in this,
Sure,
or
and
wherever
that's-
you think the right
There's-
region would be.
Yeah, and there's multiple ways to approach that, depending on what or how much this ends up costing, or how we're paying for it. If we need to do an actual RFQ out there to put this out there and say, hey, we need someone to do a road study, send us your qualifications. We can pick bids off of that. Not based on price. I believe the procurement rules don't allow you to pick on price, right? But you're looking strictly on qualifications, and then basing your decision on that and negotiating the contract.
And I would look to you, for that kind of guidance for us.
Yeah,
Okay.
I honestly think, obviously, I agree with you. Picking one consultant that came in someone's email, I think is a way to do it. I don't think it's the best way to do it. I think the best way to do it is to really put out the call out there for an RFQ. And that's something that we, as your city engineer, will be able to help the city with.
And your guy may be able to do that too. I mean, if they can, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Hell, I'll take
Alfonso.
6 or 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, super.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
We know you had to sit in traffic, so thanks for coming.
Yes,
Oh, no, it's all
really,
right.
thank
I'll be
you.
around. I'm staying for the council meeting, so if
Okay.
anyone has any questions, I'll be here. Thank you.
Okay.
Roll Tide.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, it sounds like you're on. You might be up. Yep.
Sure.
You're on.
We have 15 minutes till council, so if you want to just do an introduction, we'll let you talk again in the council meeting.
I may be off the hook by council. I'm Uriah Nelson, familiar with many, if not all of you. I did submit, I know at the last workshop, there was a request made receive a scope of work for SITCOG to provide interim city management services. I believe some other discussion as well. What I did do is I communicated with Kerry over the weekend, send him that scope, and I believe he shared that with all of you. I'm here to answer any questions you may have for that. And basically, that's about all. If you have any direct questions of what you're thinking, but Carrie and I have communicated a few times since the workshop meeting to see what that looks like, to make sure that the scope wasn't too broad, but didn't point down too hard on some things to make the scope just unworkable. So you'll see it's a pretty brief, broad scope. But it allows us the ability and flexibility to do what we need to.
First of all, thanks for getting that to us so quick. That was unbelievable.
Yes.
Thank you, Carrie, for getting that to us so quick, too.
So would you just do a quick kind of overview of what you as the COG would do for us if we hired you as the interim city manager?
As the interim city manager, we would come in, basically, Carrie would continue doing assistant city manager duties and everything. I would come in once a week, Thursday or Friday, for 8 hours a day. I would handle all the communications with the citizens, any complaints citizens may have. I would have weekly meetings, of course, heads, and other meetings as necessary. I would be available to the council and all department heads, all city staff actually, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, should something arise. And anything that Kerry felt needed to come in his normal routine duties that he felt needed to come to the city manager, he would come to me and we could have our conversations.
Yeah, so I kind of came up over the weekend, I came up with a list of what I thought it might look like after I got your proposal. And I have shared that with Carrie and Roxanne. And I know that in order to get started, you're going to need, a list and I'm going to be gone as of tomorrow for about a week. So I do have copies of that if anybody else is interested. And then Carrie's got the list from me as far as what my thoughts are.
Okay, and I want everybody to remember this is an interlocal agreement. We're extremely flexible. If we get in and we realize something in the scope needs to change, we can change that. We at any point in time, if something is going awry, you can let us know and we can fix or change however needed. We're very flexible that way.
And your primary contact point will be Carrie, and then possibly meetings with council people or status reports, or how does the reporting to council work?
Council are, of course, open to contact me whenever, and I can do a written report, or I can provide whatever type of reporting you would like me to do.
Okay.
On whatever basis that is.
Okay. So I'll just kind of state we talked about this last Friday, and one of the things we had talked about is if we would name Carrie as our interim, or if we would keep Carrie doing the job he's doing now as the assistant, and then hire the COG. That part of the discussion is kind of deciding which of those things would do. I've thought about it since Friday. I'm really glad we had that meeting. And I would love to see Kerry stay in his current position so that he has the ability to finish the audits and all that, hopefully before we got a new city manager on board. And I think that would to me, it would make us as a city look like we're coming forward with a clean slate. And I think that would be really good. And at the Friday meeting, Carrie, you can step in here anytime, but at the Friday meeting, I asked you if you thought you could do both the audits and being city manager, and he said probably not. And so that's kind of why I'm thinking adding the COG on would be maybe a good choice for us. But then I have another question, and this is unrelated to interim. Tonight we have to decide the interim city manager. But then going forward in recruiting a new city manager, what would that look like if we asked you to come on? Just off the top of your head, I want to know what
we would amend our current ILA. We would include a scope for the recruitment activities that we would do. Jim spoke last week to kind of some of the activities we do. And we just have to find out what that cost point would look like for all the activities that the council would like. That can range anywhere from us doing the entire thing to, like a hybrid
System,
type system, yeah.
yeah, which we'll have to workshop that out and figure out what we're going to do with that. Okay. Any other comments or questions on this? I'm not, it's 10 to 6, so I'm thinking the other agenda items we'll have to discuss during the council meeting. It's probably good to just take a 10-minute break before we start again. Is that all right with everybody?
Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks, you, Ryan.